Live cast. What's the date today? Tuesday 28th, I believe. Hello, ladies and gents. Welcome. It's the prodigious, the prominent professor at Proclamation News and Gatherance. I don't want to get ahead of myself because I'm still lacking a bit of education here. On the module DD103, Investigating the Social World, we are reading through the introduction of inequalities. I'll leave that lead in. Getting ready to study, part of the second part of the year. In order to prepare effectively for DD103 and any other module, it is always helpful to think about where, when, and how you study. This includes finding a suitable space in which to study, thinking about what time you have available for study in your weekly schedule, and having a sense of the structure of the module and the points at which you'll be required to write and submit assignments. It is always important to begin with a clear sense of what lies ahead and the commitment involved in studying the module. It is recommended that you aim to study 15 hours per week, but other demands may mean that you will not always be able to dedicate this much time in a week. This should not be a problem in the short term. If you find yourself falling behind, don't worry. Simply contact your tutor. You advise you on how best to get back on track. Most Open University OU students have multiple demands on their time, so it can be difficult to fit studying around other commitments to begin with, but establishing a routine and creating a study-friendly environment will equip your success. It's hard to you got to make priorities. You got to make priorities. If you want to get through your academics, whatever your circumstance. I mean, I make out I'm fantastic what I do. I've done some great stuff within politics, as you know. You come through Proclamation News and Gatherance, where I do my broadsheet newscast. I do my tabloid newscast. I'm quite a phenomenal speaker, as it happens, but I really need to get through my academics, which I've not been struggling. I've been struggling to make sacrifices. I've always got other plans, other ideas. Whatever I do in life, I'm never satisfied, are you? Always want that little bit more. You want a little bit more out of life. You're not happy with your life, circumstances. You're happy to get the chance. You're happy you got the goals. You've got a vision, but you need to give yourself that time. You need to make sacrifices away from people. Sacrifices trying to get yourself a lifestyle. You're not going to get yourself a lifestyle unless you get through your education. So I know it's a long-winded thing, but once you start making progress and success, it's when you start to reap those rewards. So study hard, make time, make sufficient time. It's beneficial. Anyone that's aiming to get education and better their well-being, I'll make priorities. One study skills from daily life to social science. Your sociological society that you could be in could be the burden to your success as well. So make that change, make that sacrifice, move if you need to move, get into the place you need to find happiness. The ability to recognise and reflect upon the skills you already have, as well as those you would like to gain or develop further. Everyone's trying to ring me while I'm studying. Hello. Oh, hi there, Barbara.
Hello, how you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. I forgot that. Do you know what? I have given up. I've been giving up smoking for about 4 days now.
Oh, okay. Do you need anything to help you?
Yeah. I mean, if I get another course of them thingies to help me through, I've got a few left, about another box left from before.
Okay. I'll try and prescribe you some. They haven't had any in, so I'll prescribe them. If you can't get them, ring me back and I'll prescribe you something else.
Yeah. Okay then. Thank you.
All right. Well done. Keep it up.
Thank you, Barbara. Yeah. Sometimes I have a downfall. I don't know if it's because with the summer you feel like you can't breathe anyway, so I feel like taking my breath away with a cigarette. That makes sense, does it?
Yeah.
But
Okay. All right then. Well, I'll do that for you now. They'll be ready for you tomorrow.
Yeah.
If they can't get hold of them for you, ring me and I'll prescribe prescribe you something different.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so
All right,
much.
Richard.
Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye. Sorry about that, guys. There's doctors for me to give up smoking, which I'm on vape. Anyway, study skills from daily life to social science. The ability to recognise and reflect upon the skills you already have, as well as those you would like to gain or develop further. It is an important personal and professional skill, whether you have studied a previous OU module or are completely new to OU study. There will be skills developed through your daily life that you can usefully bring to your studies. These could be skills you use at home, in your working life, in hobbies you may have, or in any volunteering work you might do. Below are a few suggestions of the kind of skills you might already use in daily life. Spend a few minutes thinking about the skills you use in everyday life and how they might link to your studies, and note some examples. Think about, if you're an athlete or you've got hobbies or interests, you've got cognitive skills. You're methodical. You wake up in the morning, make that time to set your goals. Are you there, Melvin? Hope you're well. Have I met you before? I'm just doing a bit of my study at the moment, Melv. I'll give you a follow. Thank you very much. There you go. I'll give you a follow. I'm just doing a bit of study at the moment. Yeah, like I say, get cognitive skills. Whatever you do in life, if it's your working pedigree or your hobbies, you're an athlete of some sort, you wake up, you do that methodical approach every time. Hello.
I'll just get it started again.
Hi, Bob.
Sorry. I'm just going to prescribe those for you, and they're saying that you can't get them, so I'm going to order you the other stuff.
Yeah.
So it's very similar to the Champix, but you don't seem to get any of the side effects with it. So just do it on one a day for 6 days.
Yeah, okay.
And then you can up it to 2 a day if you need to.
Yeah, okay then, Bob. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you, dear.
That's all done for you.
Thanks a lot, Bob. Thank you.
Thanks.
Take care. Bye, bye. Yeah, so you get cognitive skills in everyday thing you do. I'm very well, thank you, Melv. Just doing a bit of study, and I'm on my radio as well at the same time, but I will acknowledge you guys because I want to interact with them. Activities for which you have to plan, making time and space for these while balancing them with other commitments in your life. Moments when reflecting on what you have done has been helpful in terms of improving things for the future. Occasions where you have assessed information from different sources or from different formats. Times when you have had to understand an argument made by others. Perhaps you've had to consider the strengths and weaknesses of the argument. Comment. Everyone has to plan and make space for the various things in their lives. Think, for example, about planning and organising social activities, remembering families and friends' birthdays and anniversaries, organising dentist and doctor appointments, or remembering to renew your car's MOT. If you have caring responsibilities for children or elderly relatives, you'll be planning in this way much of the time. These skills will be more important in planning your study time too. Reflecting on your development in formal way may be something you do through parasols at work. More informally, we often reflect upon how we might do things differently, usually when something has not gone as well as you should have hoped. For example, a holiday or trip that wasn't organised very well, or a failed driving test, or even a conversation with a friend where you wished you had behaved differently. These skills will be important thank you so much, when reflecting on feedback from your tutor and using it to improve your work. So you have to make sure you set yourself goals and make examples of your goals. Make sure if you're going to set yourself a study target, study goal, you've got to make that time. I woke up this morning, I got mum's dog, so I'd take the dog for a walk. Then I come back to a messy flat. So I had to come back, not a flat, it's an apartment. I'd come back to my apartment and clean my apartment up, mop and hoover. Obviously, I've got to put my washing off, got to do that actually, but I've washed all my dishes, got everything ready before I study. So I'm starting a bit late than usual. I like to start my study from about 9, do 2 or 3 hours study a day to get my hours in. But sometimes I study 6, 7 days a week. Anyway, think for example about finding information about where to go on holiday. Do you consult travel brochures? Go on the internet, ask your friend for advice, or go to a travel agency? You do that. You look because you try and set yourself. You want an example of the best price you're going to spend, don't you? So what's that called? Comparing and contrasting, looking at the differences and the value. What's better to go with? Is it better to go with a travel agency? Is it better to go with travel brochure? Is it better to go in there? Not everyone does. When you go on holiday, you just want to go on holiday 9 times out of 10. But if you shop about, you can get better deals. That's what I'm getting at. That's what you should do. And everything you do, if you want to save money, save. If you say you want to go to New York, you look online. This company's £1,000, but you search down the line, find cheap travel. You might find your travel costs like £300, saving yourself £700 just because. And you go and pay the £1,000, you get back and you look later and you think, I could have saved myself £700 if I looked thoroughly. A lot of us do it. We all make these stupid. It's just malfunction. I won't call it malfunction. It makes us men look stupid. It's just human mechanism. Which want to go on a holiday, so you just book a holiday without thinking ahead. Alternatively, how you find out about the cheapest insurance deals? Do you go online to comparison website, telephone a number of companies, or compare the publicity that comes through the letterbox? You might also assess information through a range of formats such as diagrams and graphs, school or hospital league tables and reports. Whether on child school progress or football match, these skills were important when thinking about which material to select and which use when planning your assignments. I'm coming for. I've got children. Same as some of you listeners. You got a niece or a nephew, your brother or sister younger than you. When your parents move, do they think about the criminology in the sociological environment where the school is? Because that's always important to make sure your child's safe, isn't it? You don't want to take these free state schools where any kind of suburban child goes because it's free state. Anyone can go. You get all the council people brought up in the council suburban area. Not all the council areas are rough and run down. There's some high class council run areas, but you can find naughty ones amongst them. But it's down to you to check the criminology around the school, and obviously look at the schools. What are schools about? What does the school have? What does the school lack? Does this school provide good education? You should find it in the school's feedback page. Of all the sets of skills on a module, this is one that involves a more specialist understanding. Nevertheless, there will still be areas of everyday life where you're already engaging with these skills in some way. Perhaps you have had to weigh up the pros and cons of medical advice that you have been given, or you may have had listened to political arguments on the radio or television and decide whether you agree with them or not. When thinking about studying this module, did you listen to the advice of friends, family, or perhaps OU tutors or advisors? How did you consider the various costs and benefits of the OU study? These skills will be important when thinking about evaluating social science arguments, something you will do later on in the module. Study skills, time management. Of all the skills we've touched on above, high fly with me. Time management is one that is key to academic success. It is something that you probably do on a day-to-day basis. So while it means something specific in the case of at your studies, the basic skill is once more one that you already have. The first step in managing your study time is to ensure that you know what the module compromises and to familiarize yourself with the structure of study for the module. And when the assignments are due, the study planner on the module website is the place to start for this. The next step is to plan your study time. Some people prefer to study little and often, others to work for longer periods of time, less often. Where you do your studies can be just as important as the amount of time you spend on them. You've got to make sure you're in a comfortable sitting place, aren't you, when you're studying? If I sit in this place where I'm sitting now, my back, my legs, everything be hurting because it's not a comfortable seat. It's just a straight upright seat, and I can't. There's no give in the back to rock myself back or forth. So it can be uncomfortable. Across my legs, I get pins and needles in the backs of my legs. You need to make sure you're sitting comfortable while studying, but not to decline either because you'll fall asleep. The study planner on module website is the place to start for this. Next chapter, you plan your study time. Some people first study little and often, others to work for long periods of time less often. Where you do your studies can be just as important as the amount of time you spend on them. The space you have available to study will depend on your own circumstances. Whether you have a place at home or somewhere else, try to make sure that you can easily access your study materials. No matter how effective you plan and manage your time, there will always be some distractions. Distractions can be unavoidable, such as a child needing your attention, but they can also be displacent activities or ways of procrastinating in disguise. Some people say that they need the pressure of a tight deadline to get on with it. Say writing an assignment, ask yourself whether it is working for you, is really effective, or whether it is disguised procrastination. You might find you better produce your work under less stressful conditions. Below it is a checklist of some effective strategies for dealing with distractions. You may use some of them already. Set realistic goals for your study session. I'll read this section or work for 40 minutes before I make that coffee. Aim to minimize possible interruptions by putting on your answer phone or asking friends to not disturb you. How can you stop your friends from disturbing you? You can put your phone in flight mode and just go into the whole thinking zone. That's what I'm going to do in the future, because a phone call can put you off what you're just thinking. A phone call could put your mind off. You got to set in your mind that you've got a whole paragraph to write, and if someone calls you, that then gets thrown out the window. Remember that it's best to try and have short-term deadlines, then you can stick to, rather than more ambitious long-term goals. It might be hard to meet. Try not to feel that you need to produce the perfect assignment every time. Sometimes distractions will be significant and come at just the wrong time. Avoid taking on too many commitments. Learn to politely say no. Do a deal with yourself, okay? I'll go out with my friend tonight, but this means that I'll need to get up early on Sunday to study instead. Just do it. You may find that the task doesn't take as long as you expected, and you feel much better for getting it out of the way. I mean, sometimes my study gets in the way of my church because I have to go and visit my mum and dad once a week. So sometimes I have to miss church on Sunday, and that really gets me. That gets my goal, because I really like going to church. Is something I have to do every Sunday. You know, that sets me up for the week ahead. If I go to church on Sunday, it sets me up for the week ahead. Positive week. We hope that this has raised your awareness of the skills that you already use in your life outside the OU, and that this has given you confidence as you start this module. Don't worry if skills you are bringing to the module are fairly unequal, as everyone has greater strengths in some areas more than in others. Being honest about areas that perhaps need further development is one part of the reflective process. See, I'm not, I make out I'm this super bright person. I'm clever in some ways, but I don't know everything. I do not know everything. I come across really intelligent. You hear me on the radio, I do, I'm good at emphasizing. I've got a lot of characteristics. I'm enthusiastic. I'm optimistic and flamboyant, but I don't know everything. It's comparing and contrast. Compare is looking at the differences. Contrast is looking at the similarity. And I get confused with the two when I read it in text. Compare is looking at the differences. Contrast is looking at similarities. And you try and put them two in text and think that while you're trying to read is, to me, that's invisibly impossible. I don't know why. I can't see it. I can't see it and think it at the same time. Some people got is it ADHD or whatever? What? No, dyslexic. With them two words, I'm dyslexic. I try and read what a narrator is trying to get at, a social scientist or a historian, try and look at the similarities and differences. But I can do that, look at the similarities and differences, what the narrator's getting at, but trying to remember, compare and contrast in that context and remember, it throws me off, if that makes sense. Investigating money, introducing the theme of inequality. The familiar phrase, money makes the world go round, helps to emphasize why the topic of money is useful for investigating the social world in which we live, since it links to so many areas of social life. Perhaps the most familiar context for thinking about money concerns economic processes. We all live with a compassion for money, don't we? And to support our family, because money is a big thing in everyone's everyday life. You don't need to be the richest person in the world, but you need money to pay your bills, support your family, go out on nice days with your family. You don't have to be fancy days, but have your day out here and there. You got people. What gets my goat? You got people that've got nothing about them, and they've got money to go out to the nightclub, got money to go and buy narcotics, got money to go and buy clothes, and you got people like us trying to make a difference in the world. Some of us are still struggling to survive. It's shocking, really shocking. It gets my goat. And you see them sitting in town drinking 20 cans of Stella with their mates, smoking weed in the town centre. It's a disgrace that they get help. It's a mental health that they're drinking their life away. So we support it. Crazy. But we can also think about the way money has social effects through the ways it is distributed. Money is subject to regulation and taxation. This has a moral implications of relation to whether money is seen as legitimate or immoral, or even criminal in different contexts. The movement of money around the globe connects different geographical areas while forming barriers between others. It affects the ability of people to move around and the resources available to them. There are also impacts on the environment. Think, for example, the amount of air travel or level of electricity consumption. In the wealthier parts of the world, money is also political. It can have a significant influence on national and international relationships. Why study money? Money is something we're all familiar with in our everyday lives and relationships. Its significance and diversity is what makes the role of money so useful for investigating the social world. Even when the use of money might seem less significant on a day-to-day basis, such as Amazonian forest dwelling communities, people are affected by logging corporations and migrant workers making money by exploiting and developing the forest environment. Forest dwelling communities often also need money to access legal support and action to protect their livelihoods, or to access health and educational services. Many such groups want or need to least some of the time, so studying money can help us to ask questions and build evidence about the ways in which people's social and economic, political and environmental lives are organised, directly or indirectly, in relation to money. However, there are some potential disadvantages as well as advantages to studying money. It's also a part and parcel of social science study that we should be mindful of potential challenges in studying money. Common challenge in social science is being familiar with a particular topic, such as money, for example. We may feel personally attached to or affected by money, so we need to be aware that this might have a bearing on our investigation work. Recognizing that we particularly views should prompt us to ask such views might affect the questions we pose or the conclusions we draw. This is a useful reminder that while we are studying something familiar to us, we are doing so in the context of social science investigation. Hi, Queen Casey, how you doing? that we need to adopt a particular systematic approach. We do this here by developing the use of the Social Science Investigate Toolkit throughout the module, the theme of inequality. As the module introduction outlines, as well as exploring different topics, we use the themes on DD103 Block 1 introduces to each of the three themes of equality, rights and injustice, providing you both an overview of their differences and also the ways they connect to each other. Each of the themes can be brought thought as of a sort of a lens through which we can view particular topics such as money. In this sense, each of the themes provide us a view of things from a particular perspective, but these different views also connect together with a bigger picture of what we are calling the social world. In this section, we focus on the theme of equality. What is inequality and why does it matter? In this section, we consider different types of inequality and why they might matter. We also consider where inequality arises and who it affects, as well as the changing nature of inequalities between different places and over periods of time. We also consider the contested nature of inequality and the argument the inequality might be inevitable or even desirable in some cases. How big is this book anyway? I could possibly finish this by tomorrow if I want. Think about different types of inequalities you're familiar with. Jot down some of your thoughts on this. How far do you think inequality matters to society? And in what ways? You might have first considered inequalities related to money. Some examples of which these could become inequality, wealth inequality, and perhaps international inequalities related to average personal incomes or to trade and investment. You may have also considered inequalities less directly associated with money, such as inequality between different places, towns, cities, in different regions at different times. I think so as well. Like you get a social class, don't you? Think of if you was living in Chelsea. Imagine you got a council place in Chelsea. Well, the rent. Look at the rent. They're getting most of their rent helped paid for through the government. So they're like a different. They sort of get bracketed in different social class to the normal council person in a suburban area. Is that fair? No, I don't think it is. Why is that fair? Because they've got potential, and these poor people that suffer inequalities could have potential, but they haven't been given that offer to be put in a nice sociological society. Sometimes it's lack of life chances or not being helped to better their well-being. Sometimes, I believe. I was once an etiquette boxer. Could have been helped long before, you know. As you can see, I'm very, very happy-go-lucky person. I like art. I like art. Well, I've always liked artwork as a kid. Something that could have been pushed on for my life to enjoy life, you know, rather than get my head punched in for about 3 years ago, 15 years of my life. Just get my head punched in after dying 3 times when I was 18. Did I need to go to the route I had to? Anyway, moving on. It's not being narcissistic about myself, but I'm just saying about the circumstance of these people. To 50 to 100 years ago, political, educational, health inequality may have occurred to you, perhaps inequalities of knowledge, such as those who have access to and knowledge of information technology compared to those who don't. You might also have thought about inequalities based on social differences such as gender, disability, class, or ethnicity, and perhaps inequalities of environmental threats or of exposure to conflict. See, as I'm reading it out, I'm really emphasizing what I'm reading, but this is what I need to do when I'm writing in text. Listen back through and think, yeah, you know, what I was just saying, that could have been a whole assignment almost, you know, what I was just explaining over the last few pages. This is what I lack at sometimes. How do social scientists view inequalities? Social scientists are interested in studying the patterns or process of inequalities. This highlights inequalities are not necessarily fixed or simply given in a particular situation. Rather, inequalities change, are actively and inadvertently produced in in many everyday contexts. Similarly, actions also take place to reduce inequality. Most obviously through examples of change in social policies such as same-sex marriage debated in the media. Political debate is commonly characterised by claims, justifications or concerns about inequalities. The nature and effects of such debates are also of interest to social sciences. There is also extensive consideration of how different types of inequalities overlap, for example, how money is or is not invested may connect with inequalities in educational provision, healthcare, or the development of transport infrastructure. I don't know why they don't scream like the same marriage sex. You know, sort of thing. You know, you look at David Attenborough's always scream about population growth, looking after society. If we supported more of the same same-sex marriage, there'll be less population growth, isn't there? Why don't they scream it? Why don't they promote it all the more? Why don't they promote it all the more? Not that I think it's not for me, but you know, if that's what they want to do, let them be happy. It's simple as that. I don't see what the problem is. Anyway, debate often leads to social scientists asking questions about how far inequality should be considered acceptable. If some degree on inequality is considered acceptable and inevitable, some kinds of inequality may be disputed than others, whereas other kinds of inequality may be commonly understood as priorities to address for the sake of social order. For example, the United Nations Children's Fund, the UNICEF, has stated that countries should place the well-being of children at the top of the response to the recession. Not only is a moral obligation, but is in self-interest of societies. Make a note of your thoughts in response to the following questions. Can you think about different examples of how inequalities have developed or changed in different situations? Whether at home, work, or international politics, for instance, you may have discovered an inequality in relation to gender, such as inequality between men and women in workplace, and aspects of how they changed over the years. 50 years ago in the UK, it was commonly expected that marriage, a woman would give up paid work to dedicate herself for domestic work. It's commonly held views on gender equality and choice for women have changed during this period. It is quite common for married women to maintain a role in paid employment. However, debates over equal pay for men and women in the workplace have persisted over this period. You may also consider inequalities connected to age, such as reduced mobility of elderly people in their own homes compared to when they were younger. Perhaps certain life changes prompted examples such as promotion at work, the arrival of a new baby, retirement, or migration to a different country. Money and equality. The social science investigation of equality starts by asking questions based on what, when, where, how, and how much, such as what causes gender inequalities, or how do wealth inequalities change over time. In attempting to address these questions, social scientists look for different sorts of evidence. The different sorts of evidence that social scientists use and the consideration of different sorts of evidence in addressing such question is something that will be looked at in more detail later on in this block. To start with, even though it is useful to focus on the use of questions and evidence as a starting point for social science investigation, questions are used by social scientists to try and find out information they can organise and use to help them understand the social world. Evidence is sought and used by social scientists to help them understand to explain the social world. Different sorts of evidence are used to weigh up how particular arguments and claims appear to behold are true. Before we begin to develop some questions, it will be useful to think a little more about money in relation to inequality and to consider what relations are already being asked of a relationship between them. Coins and banknotes, as representing money, are almost meaningless objects, and the value of things they can be exchanged for usually much greater than the materials from which they are made. Conversely, a pound sterling cannot be exchanged for a pound in weight of gold. However, what we might call is worth has different meanings and moral values based on culture and social factors. People might attach different judgments to other people based on how they acquire or how they spend their money, for example. Somebody drawing a state pension might be viewed differently by society from a person receiving unemployment benefit. Hello, boy. Despite the fact that their incomes are both paid from state funds, in this sense, then we also need to ask questions about what money means within the society. Michael Sand of 2013 has expressed concerns about the rapid changes in the role and meaning of money and the increase in commodification of many areas of our lives, or to put it another way, the increasing tendency to put price on things. Sandel is concerned about a drift towards a market society where almost anything is up for sale and where even people's bodies and health can be commodified for advertising our experiments. He argues that the significant health and the safety risks of such moves mean poor people will be more vulnerable to send their bodies in such ways to acquire money, perhaps to pay for their studies or for basic needs. Another example he gives concerns the use of private personnel rather than state military personnel to fight in Afghanistan. This may mean that the poorest in society take risks and become dispensable commodities. If money is to change society practices so significantly, he argues, society risks losing many fundamental shared values. For Sandel, these changes are causing an intensification of inequality, which is allowed to continue will create a danger of society becoming increasingly and more significantly divided. Sandel claims that inequalities is pushed beyond certain limits, threatens a good life for everybody in society, and that inequalities are in many ways already having significant impact on social lives. This is one particularly social science arguments about the relationship between money and inequality. Next, we will look at two further social science arguments about money and inequality, showing how different social science arguments can help us to further investigate the social world through the lens of inequality. While the analysis of inequality is commonly concerned with areas of exclusion and those are excluded, social scientist Saskia Sassen has used the term expulsion to convey the inequalities created through the spatial displacement of people, which she argues are insufficiently captured through standard categories such as inequalities and poverty. The term expulsion has often been used in relation to the expulsion of people from areas of land to make their way for development, such as logging enterprises, or for factory, road, or dam building projects. As also, particularly crops become increasingly valued on global markets. People can experience expulsion to make their way plantations for crops, such as oil farms. Expulsion can also be seen in relation to a building of luxury accommodation. Developments in previous poor area cities has occurred in areas of London, for example, in Stratford prior to 2012 Olympic Games, or in London's Docklands during the 1980s and 1990s. However, Sassin argues that they were witnessing a wider process even beyond these more obvious forms of expulsion, whereby land acquisition by large international firms and wealth of foreign countries threatens the authorities of poorer nations. That was Sassin 2013. I'm gonna do. I might do two more pages and then we'll call that today. That's 20 pages done. I don't need to go mad because my study don't start till second, but I do want to get through this book in the next couple of days because I want to start the other book after. No rush. I need to enjoy and understand of inequalities. People from areas of land make way for developments such as logging enterprises. German German social scientist Ulrich Beck has argued that neither class nor nationality of great significance in understanding equality in a contemporary world. But person groups, populations across nation state boundaries are significantly affected in their situation and life's opportunities by consequences of the decisions and structures of others. Decisions and structures that Beck refers relate to particularly to inequalities associated with risk, whereas more powerful and rich society are able to buy their way out of risky environments. Look at Afghanistan, for example. You're in a bad situation. Imagine a bad situation happening in England and we've got no money to get out. We're stuck. We've got no savings. You've got no money to get out. You're having an absolute crisis in your life. You've got nothing. I've got nothing. So if that war that's going in Afghanistan happened over here, I've got no chance getting out. I've got no savings. I've got no chance, no hope. I'll be left here stranded. After all that hard work I've done over the years, worked 20 years in construction, 5 years professional boxer, got nothing. Got absolutely not a bean to get out. The government have given me another life chance. I'm not going to write them off, but what they could be doing is trying to get, not the government, well, they could actually, it's down to the government really, because I'm divorced pretty much. Pretty much divorced. They should get me back half what I own. That's what they should do. That's exactly what they should do. One such example would be exporting toxic materials, including nuclear and chemical bioproducts. For the rich, the enormous risk associated with economic production are translated into acceptable costs, whereas poor people have no choice and potentially not even necessary knowledge to protect themselves from other risks to their health and livelihoods. 2 more pages and then that is me done for reading. What questions about money might we ask to better understand inequalities highlighted in these arguments? What evidence can we identify from arguments about the role of money and the nature of inequalities? Evidence we can identify from arguments about the role of money and the nature of inequalities. Exactly that. You got to say, you got social class, you got social gender, you got life chances. There's many things you can put in that category there without me even going back over it. I was saying, like, in our circumstance where we are in our region, wherever you are in the world, you got middle class in a poor society, not much life chances to get out. You're on the outskirts of your country. You got to then get to the airport. You got to pay for your fuel to get there. You got to pay for your flight to get out. If you do need to evacuate your country or whatever, for whatever circumstance, maybe the terrorism that's going on in Afghanistan is going to happen wherever you are. Just picture that in your head. That doesn't give you much life chance. Or your children get bullied at school, wherever you are in the world, because of that sociological society. Anything like that, no? You can put anything like that in the same context. In all 3 of the social science arguments outlined above, those of Sandel, Sasson and Beck, we can see inequalities are highlighted in slightly different ways, but common thread around relationship between money and equality. For Sandel, they arise from the increasing commodification of aspects of social life, which creates a situation where more poor become vulnerable for a greater need to realise the monetary value of things such as their own bodies. Sasson observation is similar, but the scale of land grabbing across geographical and political borders with his national sovereignty which becomes a sacrifice for financial gain. For Beck, the story is slightly different in that it is not about sin of personal and national interests. Sometimes it can, it is a political thing, I think, because sometimes from a political perspective, the rich become richer and the poor become poor. There's no help. There's no help to come out of sight. In England, it's a neoliberal government. It's a fair trade system. They give the poor people free education to better their life chances, down to the poor people whether they want to better themselves or not. Usually, the poor people suffer alcohol and narcotics, and there's no way out. They've got, that's their own mental health, their mental state of mind. They need help. There are places to get help, but if they offer to take it or not, it's not down to the doctor. It's not down to anyone else to make them. They prescribe them with the help. It's up to them to keep maintaining the help, and they get the ump. Alcoholic, narcotic abusers get the ump and don't want to better themselves. But about those that already have financial dominance, using it to secure themselves against environmental risks such as pollution. where in turn transferred to poor. Across these examples, it seems that equality is created through a process of buying and selling. So the kind of questions we want to ask about money might include what is in relationship between money and authority. It's possible to put a price on a risk avoidance. Does financial commodification lead to social division? Each of the three arguments draw on a range of evidence, although the examples are only lightly touched upon here. The texts themselves provide a great deal of detail and explanation to demonstrate their evidential value. For Sandel, these range from personal healthcare to military personnel. For Saturn, evidence is found in a range of financial transactions involving land purchase by governments and private companies. For Beck, the evidence comes from examples of environmental case studies, such as nuclear accidents or industrial chemical pollution incidents. In conclusion, this section has introduced you to the following key learning areas and skills. The topic of money is meaning, value, and global influence in making the world go round. As well, its significance and uses social science study. The theme of inequality is different forms and the ways it may be understood as a module theme in providing a lens for viewing and interpreting for social world from a particular perspective. Social science investigation. Who's in the building? Can't see. I've got new messages. I can't see them. See if let me. No, it's not let me. And this section has introduced the following key learning areas and skills. The topic of money is meaning, value, and global influence, making the world go round, as well as its significance as used in social science study. The theme of inequality is different forms and the ways it be understood as a module theme of providing a lens for viewing and interpreting the social world for a particular perspective. Social science investigation and involve questions of evidence in finding out more about relation between money and equality. I'm going to finish that on there, page 20. I don't want to rush my reading. I've nearly done an hour. I didn't want to go and do an hour today, but I have. It's not the end of the world. I can finish this book in a couple of days. I'm not going to rush it. Like I say, I want to enjoy it. And yeah, I'm going to read it. I think some of this is part of my assignment, the introduction. I didn't realise. Investigating the social world. The introduction is part of my study. It's part of my. It's going to be part of my first assignment because I realised one of the names are in there. But I can go back over that. As you see, I'm really good at emphasising when I'm reading. So hopefully I can put that into text. But now I've got this special equipment. It might well help me. It might well help me with my future study. Thank you anyway, everyone coming through. Proclamation of the government. Appreciate it. Page 20 on introduction.